Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Kronk.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen of Golf Industry Guru. It is James Kronk back again with another Gig Podcast. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is on everyone's mind. It doesn't matter whether you are in whatever part of the world. The issue these days of employees, finding them, keeping them, training them, having a workplace that is a place where people want to be is a topic that is on everyone's mind these days and something that is a challenge in the golf and the hospitality business. So we are very fortunate today to have Robin Turnill with us of Pivot HR Services. She's the founder. She's the managing consultant. Robin is an expert, works with other golf clubs in the industry and has experience helping golf clubs with their HR needs. And so I am thrilled to have Robin join us today on today's Gig Podcast. Robin, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, James.
Robin, if you don't mind, let's just start off, if you don't, and share a little bit with our audience about how you kind of got to what you're doing today. I guess a little bit about your experience as well. We don't need to use club names, but just your experience in the golf space, and a little bit about just kind of the services that your company provides, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So I myself have been in the wonderful field of human resources for upwards of 20 years. I had the pleasure of teaching for many years at university in human resources. And actually through that time, there was a lot of students in my courses that worked for golf courses. So actually that's my sort of first foray into hearing about what life of employment is like at a golf course. I have worked in a number of different industries, and really Pivot has grown organically over the years. While I was teaching at university, I would take contracts here and there because I love staying connected to industry while also teaching. And then one day it sort of hit that critical decision point where I had to choose which avenue I was going to go down. And I'm so delighted that I ended up deciding to full-time focus in consulting. I still am able to embed a lot of the teaching that I did at university, but this time it's for new cohorts. This is for organizations where we launch our training programs. So we do a lot of work around leadership development, certainly as you're talking about the hot topics of recruiting and retention. How do we keep great people once we find them? We do a lot of work around compensation and total rewards, recognition, and also, really thinking about what does it mean to create inclusive and diverse workforces. So creating plans around that for organizations and doing lots of surveys around employee engagement and diversity and inclusion. So, the full cycle of what you might anticipate in human resources out of a firm. We're a team of 9. And yes, we've been fortunate to work with golf industries on things like training their leadership teams, helping write employee manuals, dealing with employee relations issues that may come up, and certainly involved in doing a lot of hiring as well.
That's awesome. And that's, Robin, how you and I connected was through that. Some of our Golf Industry Guru members have used your company's services and have wonderful things to say about you and your team and about how you've helped them. And so my first kind of question for you really is this buzzword about, the new changes post-COVID of employees and what's different now. And, we hear it all the time about people leaving the hospitality industry, difficult to attract people to the hospitality industry, the changing needs and wants of the Gen Zs or millennials, whatever age group you're talking about. Really, people thinking differently. These kind of current years that they're talking about how people have rethought about what they do, what they choose to do, what they want to do, the work from home kind of aspect of post-COVID. I mean, in what kind of calls are you getting? And when we talk about kind of the challenges facing the hospitality industry and other industries about labor, what do you think is kind of new and different that we're experiencing or that you're seeing from people that need people to do the job?
Yeah, right. Where did they all go? That's the big question that I hear everyone ask.
Where did they all go? Exactly.
So, absolutely. I think the hospitality industry is one of the most hard-hit industries post-COVID for a number of reasons. The first being that we know there's this overwhelming preference right now from employees to want to engage in either hybrid or remote work. And the statistics up at like 80% of people say they would choose a place to work on the basis of being able to have that flexibility around hybrid or remote. And as we know, it's pretty hard to serve people, provide that excellent hospitality from a computer at home. And so right away, that has created a shift for the hospitality industry as many people have tried to actively seek out jobs where they're able to do some, if not all, from home. The second thing that we saw was because the hospitality industry was hard hit during COVID, people left that industry. They got scared, I think, that how long would they be unemployed? How long could they live on the benefits that were coming out of the federal government at that time? And some people went back to school or explored other industries. So they've actually left the hospitality industry. And that's affecting golf courses and hotels and restaurants and bars. All of those industries are really seeing a shift. And the other thing I think that is really difficult is that people have also left urban centers. So, that people, now that there was this, people were either unemployed or they were finding jobs where they were able to work remotely. And so they've vacated some of the core of where they used to live. I don't know if you've been downtown recently, but it's so much quieter, right? Where's all the traffic? And so as a result of those factors of people maybe not living as close to where they used to work, and quite frankly, not wanting to, in some cases, come in and drive far, it's also left some of the golf courses that might be connected to some of the urban centers in a more precarious place than they were previously. So those are some of the factors that we're hearing and seeing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I had never really thought before about the element of people moving away from certain centers to also because the financial challenges that COVID created. When you're already living paycheck to pay the rent, and you can't pay the rent based on a subsidy or a government handout, then obviously you've got to find some less expensive alternatives, and sometimes that is living in other areas, obviously. So a lot of kind of transition. Do you think that we will be able to attract people back to wanting to do the dishes and wanting to, be a dish technician or wanting to cut grass at 5 o'clock in the morning? I mean, do you see any signs that there will be any kind of a return for younger people or for people looking for work that will come back to the hospitality industry? Or has there been any kind of positive growth in that side of things in the last, 6 to 12 months?
I think there's a couple of factors at play that could yield positive results for the golf industry and other hospitality industry organizations. Number one is that a lot of organizations are in all sorts of industries are saying, it's enough with the remote work and the hybrid work. We're running into a lot of challenges for that. It's not necessary anymore. Come on back. Mm-hmm. And so, as more organizations make it commonplace for the expectation to be that people be in office, be present, be on site, that will no longer have the hospitality industry stick out so much as it does maybe right now.
Right.
The second thing is that, there's so many social benefits and inherent benefits that we're learning about being social creatures where we need to be around people. And so the more people actually work in front of a computer and stay home, and over time, they start to realize they feel disconnected. And so I'm now hearing a little bit of a shift of people saying, I'm tired of this. I'm in my 20s and I don't see anyone all day long for, weeks on end unless they purposely go out and make plans in the evening. And people that previously used work as a bit of a social hub, as a means of connection, I think are starting to miss that, which is going to bode well for organizations that do have people that work on site and work together and need to work on teams to be able to accomplish goals. So I do think we're going to see potentially the pendulum swing back, which will be great. And by and large, I always believe if you're an excellent employer, if you're an employer of choice with a strong brand, with a reputation of treating people really well, maybe, with some unique perks or maybe some career pathing, able to invest in people and show them where they can move their careers along at your organization, then I think that word gets out and travels quickly. So I think organizations should really be thinking about what can we do to set ourselves apart as being an excellent employer of choice so that people will want to come work for us.
Along those lines, because I couldn't agree with you more. I've always said that great places to work will never have trouble finding staff. Obviously, that's a pretty obvious, simple statement to make. But the truth is that if you're an employer of choice, you're going to get the cream of the crop in your market. And at least you're going to be able to have the choice of people you want to bring on your team. But when we talk about being an employer of choice, 5 years ago, being an employer of choice seems to be a little bit different to be an employer of choice 5 years ago than it is today. Today you read about, you got to provide flexibility. When someone wants to take the 3-day long weekend and they want to go visit their cat, you have to let them go, do what they got to do, or whether or not you've got, perks and benefits and education or like you said, a path, things like that. If you are a golf club and you have 30 employees or you're whatever, you have 30 or 3 or 300, it doesn't really matter. What would you say are kind of the top, 3 things that you really should be focusing on as a leader, as a manager, to create a workplace that is to be an employer of choice? Let's just assume you have a clear brand. Let's assume you have clear identity about what's expected of your team and what your customers want and all those types of things. But as a leader, what do you think today's employee, no matter what age they are, is going to prioritize and say, I love working at that place?
Yeah. Absolutely. And actually, I do have some good information about that because last year launched a large engagement survey for golf club here in the Lower Mainland. And I can tell you some of the themes actually that emerged from that. And I would also say that the themes I heard from that are themes I hear regularly when doing engagement surveys, actually across industries. But here are a few. One is that people want to feel valued and recognized at work. There's actually a lot of research and information about this on the whole, but when you mention generation, this sort of generational impact or what matters to generations, there's a lot of research to suggest that some of the younger or emerging professionals, that generation, really it's important to them to feel that they are being acknowledged and that their work is being seen and they feel the impact of their contribution. So that's really important. Another thing going sort of hand in hand with that by extension is that people want to be able to see learning opportunities. They want to know that they're progressing, that they're upskilling. There's sort of this big sort of rush in the workplace today of people wanting to feel that they can accelerate their careers, that there's this forward trajectory that's happening all the time. And so one of the ways employers can support that is putting on some courses, things like lunch and learns, sponsoring maybe some mentorship opportunities for emerging leaders, different things to show employees that there's other possibilities outside of their normal role that they take on with the club or with the organization. Another issue that's really come to the forefront, and I think it's because of the reality of rising costs today, is compensation is being looked at like I have never seen it focused on before. Money's always been a big thing. Money's always been important. It's a really hot topic, though, in organizations today. I mean, how could it not be with the rates of interest and inflation that we're seeing? But employees want to feel that they are being paid fairly relative to the labor market and that they can support themselves in the jobs that they're taking on.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I think is very tricky about that, and I, we consult with clubs and sometimes work with GMs or work with boards of directors and things like that. And I like the fact that you had that third, because what I always answer someone when they want to have the conversation about compensation is I say, well, we're going to talk first about number 1 and 2, because if you think that solving your employee challenge is just by paying people $2 more an hour, if you don't take care of items 1 and 2, if you don't have an empathetic leadership style, if you don't care about people, if you don't create career training and education and show them the value, I don't care what you pay them. They're not going to be loyal. They're not going to stay forever. You're not going to have the right kind of group. You're not going to have the best player on your team. And so what I always think in our industry sometimes is that we sometimes are very quick to believe that money is going to solve our employee problems and our challenges. And so we go to the people that write the check and we say, I have to pay $3 more an hour to keep this person. I have to pay $5 more an hour to track someone to come and work for our club. And my answer is always, possibly. But let's make sure we're hitting, it out of the park on all the other elements, because let's make the dollar per hour the last factor that someone considers about staying or coming back next season, and not the first factor about whether or not they're going to stay and come back. Because it's very easy in our industry to say that we just have to pay more money, and all of a sudden our labor's up 20% over last year, and we haven't solved our labor problem. And we haven't got a better culture. We haven't got a better service experience. Our members aren't happier. Our customers aren't happier. But we're paying 20% more, and nothing's changed, right? That's a bad equation. So I'm not saying you put the compensation third on purpose, but I'm gonna say, in my experience, Robin, that I love the fact that was served, because the value and recognition part, like you said, and we do the same. We do engagement surveys. We talk to staff. Very rarely is I want more money the number one reason that people talk about. It is often on there somewhere. What else can we do to make you enjoy your work better at XYZ Golf Club? You could pay me more money. That's always on there. But it's not, why do you work at XYZ Golf Club? Because of the money. Right? Or why do you love working here? Because of the money. It's because of the people, because of my boss, because of the environment, because of the way we're treated, because I get to watch the sunset every day. I mean, whatever is the rationale.
We'll get back to our conversation in a moment. But first, are you ready to learn from the world's greatest golf and hospitality industry leaders? Train your team and grow your business with a membership to Golf Industry Guru. Join for less than $3 per day and give your entire team access to over 150 hours of courses, podcasts, webinars, templates, articles, live Q&A calls, and more. Free content samples and registration details at golfindustryguru.com.
So I'd like to kind of transition a little bit, if you don't mind, Robin, and talk about this very important topic, which is creating an inclusive workplace. And, you know, when I say to someone, do you have an inclusive work environment? There's many ways to interpret that question. Right? That, you know, does that mean that you are accessible to people of all disabilities? Does that mean that you have mental health support? Does that mean that you welcome people from every community and sexual orientation, and you create an environment that makes people feel safe without bullying? I mean, all those types of things. And so yes. I guess my first question for you is, if you're a club manager listening to this podcast, or you're a manager listening to this podcast, what would be some things that you could ask yourself to answer the question, do I currently have an inclusive and diverse work environment? Like how do we determine, before we determine what do we got to put in place to create one, how do we know if we have one already or don't? Can you answer that question? Is that a question that can be answered?
Well, I'll take a stab at it.
Wonderful, please.
You're absolutely right. Inclusion can just mean all of the factors that you just named, 100%. And we do a lot of work with organizations around creating inclusive workspaces. What I actually find to be a telltale sign of whether or not inclusion is happening in an organization is asking leaders to reflect on the following. One is, how well do you treat dissenting opinions? So if you're sitting in a meeting and you're let's say it's a leadership meeting and people are sharing ideas, when someone brings up a counterpoint to the status quo or the way things are done there, is that welcome? Are they silenced? Are they brushed over? How well is an organization listening to ideas, to new suggestions that come forward? Because the sign for sure of inclusion is, if I feel included in my workplace, then I feel safe to offer up suggestions. I feel excited to give my expertise and lend my thoughts on a particular topic. And so the other thing I would say would be a good temperature check would be, in addition to how well do we manage dissenting opinions, who are we seeking input from when we want to make a business decision or make a change in our organization? Who are we consulting? Who are we talking to? If we're only speaking externally to people or up to the board or keeping it just tight in a senior leadership level, then my guess is you're missing a lot of really important feedback that would all lend itself to the creation of inclusive workplace. So those would be a couple key points to consider when you're trying to ask yourself, as you said, if I'm the leader here at a golf club, am I doing these things? Am I welcoming diverse opinions? And am I consulting and seeking input from various levels within the organization?
And so, okay. And so when we talk about diversity, for example, right? And so for me, when I think about the initiative or the efforts or the importance of having a diverse workplace, I think of the day when we used to have a policy where a tattoo couldn't be visible on your person. We had a policy in our dress code that said you couldn't have an earring that wasn't in an ear. that if it wasn't in your ear, it couldn't be worn at work. And I don't think you can do that anymore. I think in pretty much in today's day and age, I think you get in trouble if you have a dress code policy that's like that. But you can understand, obviously, and because you know how progressive golf courses are, and we know how in particular private clubs, they're so far on with tattoos and t-shirts and not long socks and turtlenecks. So obviously, there's going to be a bit of a conflict sometimes when you talk about inclusivity and diversity and freedom and flexibility and individualism versus the look and feel and the environment or the brand or the expectation of the guest. Right? So how does a club navigate through that process and how so that you both welcome the individualism of employees, but you also create an environment that meets the expectation of your guest, if that makes sense.
It really does. And it's a bit of an inherent tension, isn't it? For sure.
It can be. Not always. It depends on the expectation of your client and what you're selling, right? If your clubhouse is a library and no one can raise their voice and you're hiring, and you want your people to dance and sing when it's someone's birthday, well, you're going to have conflict because those two things don't mix. But you can't be everything for everybody. So
you can't be. That's exactly right. And to me, what would be the most important is being true to the organization's culture. So what is the expectation around the creation and the cultivation of a guest experience? What does that look like here? How do we talk to each other? What language do we use? How do we professionally show up? Where can we be relaxed and have those moments? Like, what would be appropriate avenues to be able to maybe showcase our tattoos or do some show and tell, or setting the stage for what we want to do as a team and what we collectively want to emulate in a given organization is, I think, really important. And I think when you set that expectation at the point where you hire employees and you talk about, this is our core values, this is how our culture works, and letting people sort of self-select into that, or potentially self-select out if that doesn't resonate for them or they think they might be uncomfortable in that kind of culture. That's one aspect. Another aspect, though, is we can have moments, we can have staff parties, or we can do things as a team where it's A-okay to, sort of let loose and have the ability to share what's really meaningful to us. And also, we can also do that through education sessions too, because I would say that sometimes when you bring a group of people together, and I've done this at golf clubs specifically, and we can have moments where we're sharing things about our authentic selves, getting to know each other on a bit of a deeper level. We may not showcase that fully in how we're showing up every day at work, because we're there maybe with a particular mission of how we want to show up for our guests, but creating the opportunities to do that and allow that diversity to shine through in moments where the team all connects together, I think that would be really important. If it is indeed one of those situations where it appears that there may be some tensions between the culture and always allowing full freedom of individuality and expression that way.
I got so many questions. Let's keep going with this first. When I got this business, my job, I had a couple of very simple jobs. One of my jobs was to show up before my boss and to leave after my boss, no matter what. So if he showed up at 6 a.m., I better be there at 5:45. And if he went home at 9, I better leave at 9:15, because I knew that that's what was expected of me. I was getting paid a salary. I was making $2 an hour by the time you broke it out into the $1 per hour range, right? And that's just the way the business was. That's just what was expected back in the day, right? Back in the day. I use it as an example by a story that I just heard, that I know of from the other day. And this is where I think of HR consultants and professionals, because I could imagine that your phone just must get busier and busier with managers like myself who are now don't know how to deal with certain situations because we're afraid of making the wrong decision. I'll give you an example. I have a club, and some staff came to the manager and said, we are not going to work on Sunday because you're having a Hawaiian night where it's luau party, and we believe you're disrespecting the Hawaiian people. And the coconut bras and the music and the pig on the spit is not authentic, and so we're going to boycott working that night. Okay. Now, when I heard that story, I literally lost my mind. And I thought to myself, you didn't seem to have any problem working on Christmas or on, St. Patrick's Day or on you're not Hawaiian. So I'm not sure who you're fighting for, but the dancers that we have coming in are actually Hawaiian. Like they're a Hawaiian dance group, and this is what they do for a living, to promote their heritage, promote their culture. But I can tell you that from a manager standpoint, it was like you can't respond the way you want to respond because you're all of a sudden in HR hell. It's just like, if I say if I say the wrong thing, I'll be in the front page of Twitter and we'll be wrongfully dismissal, we'll be in court, So I guess, Robin, what would be some advice for a more experienced manager like myself, that comes from decades of we do what we're supposed to do, and we respect people and we take care of people, but sometimes the things from an HR standpoint go a little off. Well, they become challenging. Let's just put it that way. Do you find that you get more and more kind of inquiries from managers like myself that are looking for that professional guidance, because you have to be so careful now about what you say or about what you write or about what you put forward, right? From a messaging and from a management standpoint.
Absolutely, you do. It's been a tremendous shift in the work world. It is the era of everything getting posted on social media. So if an employer, as to your point about being on Twitter, the employer does something inadvertently, boom, everyone's communicating about it. There's probably a WhatsApp channel going on about it, and maybe someone's posting on social media. Absolutely. The accountability for organizations today is like we have never seen it at this level because of all the avenues now that people will pursue if they think their organization is doing something they would deem offside. Do we get calls about it? All of the time. I'll respond to your specific example, and maybe I'll highlight a recent one of my own that just came up. The notion of cultural appropriation. So with this situation with the luau, one of the things that I think is really wise for organizations today is to maybe have social committees or to have employee networks provide input into So like social events for sure, because we're starting to hear a lot of kickback. Why did you do a pub crawl for your team building? Half the people don't drink. That's offensive to think people might want to sit there and drink. It's against people's religion or lifestyle preferences. So there's an example. If you plan, let's say like an outdoor physical event, such as let's all go kayaking together, then maybe you hear you're not respecting the diverse physical needs of the team. So one of the things that I think is really important is just that listening, and also giving employees responsibility then for doing some brainstorming and putting proposals forward on the types of activities that they would like to see happen in the workplace. So I think maybe moving that away from leadership to employees, and then once the ideas come forward, maybe you have employees vote on it, something like that. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend in today's world of trying to throw some social events or some team building activities for staff. I'll share with you an example of one. So I think it's quite common, right, to give performance feedback, employer to give an employee performance feedback. There's now been resistance to employers giving employees feedback that they are not being mindful of the power differential that exists between a manager and an employee, and they're creating an unsafe space by doing that. So there's a culture now of employees speaking out about things that maybe wasn't there previously. And so I think it's a place for employers to shift into listening mode, understanding mode, maybe thinking about some new ways of doing things, because there's no question about it. Everything now from a party to the way you adopt a business practice is now getting so much more feedback than we ever saw come forward before.
Well, the power shift, I mean, I said before, like when COVID created what I would call the power shift in golf between the consumer and the club, right? It's like before COVID, you know, the golfer told us how much they were going to pay and when they were going to play, basically speaking. And then all of a sudden demand, you know, went through the roof, and we started telling them, well, guess what? You know what? You're going to play Saturday morning at 9:00. You're going to pay full rack rate, and I'm not giving you a deal. But the shift that's also happened between the employees now and the business, right? So the people that are responsible for running the business and the need to have employees to do the work, right? You know, we like you said, I mean, we literally can't walk through a kitchen yelling at people anymore, telling them to, you know, clean this and do that. And, you know, let's go. Food needs to be on the table in 3 minutes. You have to sit them down and buy them coffee first and talk to them gently and, you know, ask them how they're feeling. And, you know, what's there anything happening at home that I can help them with, you know? And by the way, would you mind possibly speeding up a little bit, because lunch can't take 45 minutes. I mean, it's a real transition. You know, we talk about, you know, you hear this word empathy is thrown around all the time about leadership is now about empathy. And it's very interesting. I got to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and tracking down gurus and people that have opinions about this kind of stuff and listening to this kind of talk. And it's very interesting to me when I see this conversation around the need to take care of the employee, but there's not a lot of conversation around the need to get the business done. Mm-hmm. And it's I find it's a fascinating, because like the reality is that without a business and profit, there will be no employee. There is no job, right? So we can't just keep giving people 4-day work weeks and in 25% higher wages if we expect and pay 35% more in fuel, if we expect the business to still be able to make $1 so that we can exist.
Exactly.
And if demand decreases as it did in 2022. If demand decreases in 2023 and 2024, from a golf standpoint, we're going to be back to where our expenses are going to be 25% higher, but our revenues are going to go back to where fundamentally they may have been in 2018, 2019, plus or minus 10%. And it's not going to be an equation that's going to be successful.
Right.
So I'm fascinated by this. I think it's an incredibly challenging time to be a manager of people right now. Would you agree that it seems like if you are responsible for managing people, it's coming at you from all sides right now?
Absolutely. I can't think of a time in our history, or certainly in the last 25 years that I've been intricately involved with the world of work, where it has been so complex to be a leader. It's just fundamentally, there's a huge attitude shift towards work that's happening. There's obviously all of the COVID issues that have arisen. DEI is center stage, diversity, equity, inclusion issues,
yes,
center stage in organizations. The Me Too movement coming out of with sexual harassment. I mean, there are so many hot button topics in organizations today, and also, leaders are being tasked, though, in addition to really intensely managing their people, watch out for their mental health, make sure they feel really valued and that they have your time and that you're mentoring and that you're empathetic to all the things going on in their life. There's so many things that a leader now of people has to be aware of. And so from where I sit, I think there needs to be a real investment in leadership training so that they feel comfortable. They know what expectations are there for them. Maybe even leadership circles where they can come together and talk about some of these issues, because it's happening fast and furious. There's a lot of different things that leaders are being charged with now that previously they would not have seen.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think, that's, we find it obviously in gig. I mean, that, we're a training platform that is trying to help managers be better managers. The things that people are asking about, not 8 times out of 10 is about dealing with people. It's just, it's like help me, whether it's find people, train people, motivate people, reward people, deal with these types of things that you're talking about. I mean, we always say we're in the people business. I mean, it was a little white ball whacking around a green grass, but at the end of the day, we're in the entertainment business, we're in the people business, we're in the, we've got to create a culture where people are having fun and love to be at work that creates great service and a great experience so that our customers are happy, so that they pay more money so that we can pay the bills. I mean, it's the circle of life in its own little microcosm, obviously. So Robin, kind of my last little question for you, because we're running out of time a little bit, but we're going to do this again because there's so many things on my page here that I've been writing down that I want to come back and ask about one day. But if you're a manager with all these challenges, what advice would you give a manager to help them take care of themselves in order for them to do and take care of all these challenges? What advice would you give a manager, a leader, to say, hey, remember these, few little bits of wisdom as you wake up tomorrow and try to deal with difficult, issues that we're facing right now in this business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a few things. The first is shifting the conversation with employees. And I'll tell you what I mean when I say that. So they are hearing a lot from their employees about all their wants and needs. It's really important too, I think, for leaders to share what their challenges are with their team, to be able to explain some of the priorities that they're dealing with. So for example, when an employee says, I only want to work 4 days a week now, for a leader to say, I understand that's a preference. And I'd like to be able to talk you through, though, the impact on the business if we were to do that, and what that might mean in terms of cascading effect of others wanting to do that. And, just from an education perspective, can I explain to you? So I think leaders need to educate their employees in a really respectful way. And it's about them understanding maybe a little bit about the financial realities of running the business, some of the constraints that come. So I think that's one thing, not to be afraid to educate back. And that can be done in a really respectful way. Second thing I think is that managers need to set boundaries. They can't all through their day just be responding to employee issues. It's okay as a leader to say, I'd love to talk to you. Right now, let's set up a time to be able to do that, because I have some focus work and some pressing priorities I need to be managing right now. So don't be afraid to set up boundaries. And I think we're at our best when we can pick and choose when we enter into those conversations, because we can make sure, are we in the right headspace to be able to have these kind of conversations? Do I have the appropriate time? So I think that's really important. And also find a buddy, find a leader buddy that you can share ideas with, that you can debrief with about experiences that you're having. It's a lot for someone to be taking that on, especially newer leaders or leaders that are now seeing issues they've never seen before. That can also be really helpful, maybe therapeutic, to be able to share some of those concerns with someone else.
That's awesome. Yeah, great advice. Wonderful advice. Robin, how would Gig Nation get in touch with you? I know that you guys literally probably, I'm sure, I know from our conversations of looking at your website and your background, that you literally handle all areas of HR, and as I said, have some great clients in the golf industry here in British Columbia and beyond that I know you've helped. And so how can Gig Nation get in touch with you best if they've got a question for you or they wanted to reach out and talk with you more?
Great. I'd love to talk to anyone who's interested. And you can reach us. Phone number, old school, here we go. An old school phone number, 604-916-6199. And my personal email address is Robin, ROBIN, @pivothrservices.ca.
Awesome. I love it. Robin, thank you so much for coming on board. I know we've got some of Robin's and her team's kind of content, blogs, articles, things like that, coming onto the Gig platform, if it's not there already by the time you listen to this podcast. Thank you so much. I would love to have you back. This topic and, the topic of DEI and the topic of just employee engagement and leadership engagement is never ending, as you know, and there's always going to be new things. But I agree with you very much. I think we are in one of the most challenging and changing times of leading people that I've certainly ever witnessed as well, with all the other stresses of business and demands and validation that's required and customer expectations and all kinds of other stuff. It's a very challenging and amazing time. So thank you, Robin. Thank you, Gig Nation, for listening to today's podcast. We will once again, as always, see you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.